This is it. This is the end of the line. You're telling me.
We never thought that we would want a Karate Kid sequel that was all about the bad guy, and yet, here we are. The Cobra Kai YouTube turned Netflix TV show is a continuation of the very famous 80s classic set 34 years after the events of the movie took place. While you might have thought they'd focus on Daniel LaRusso, the hero of the original film, instead, the creators decided to make it all about his bully, Johnny Lawrence. Turns out that they made the right choice, but they did have to change a few other things along the way. Keep watching to find out all of the ways that the creators of Cobra Kai have changed, reimagined, and added on to the legendary story of the Karate Kid.
Because I get killed if I show up there.
Get killed anyway.
While John Crease, the infamous Cobra Kai teacher from Karate Kid, was a powerful instructor, we all know that he was a pretty bad guy. He taught his students some very dangerous methods and ideas that were actually pretty antithetical to the ideas behind karate. And we get to learn that Johnny really disliked Crease and his teachings. But what was different about the second season of Cobra Kai was that when Johnny meets up with his old karate buddies, we find out that they all hated Crease as well. And when we find out that he's helping Johnny teach at Cobra Kai again, they're all shocked and horrified that he would allow Crease to teach more kids the things that he taught them. As adults, they were able to look back and realize just how truly terrible his teachings were, and how much more damage he did than good. We all knew in Karate Kid that Johnny grew up in a home with some serious family money, but even though we normally assume that money makes things better, in Cobra Kai we learn that Johnny actually had a pretty horrible time at home. He lived with his mom and his stepfather, and while his mother was loving towards her son, his stepdad was abusive and manipulative. He told the young Johnny over and over again that he would never amount to anything, and Johnny took those words to heart. It gives us a whole other perspective into why Johnny behaved the way he did, and why he became a bully in the first place. And finally, 34 years later, we get to see Johnny stand up to the man who made his childhood a miserable experience, and it's such a triumphant moment for the character. We know that Johnny and Daniel went very separate ways after the end of the Karate Kid, but what we didn't know was just how much Daniel would continue to be idolized after his big win. Well, in Cobra Kai, they make it very clear that everyone in town knew about his victory, and that he's been treated very differently than Johnny for years because of it. So much so that he was able to parlay it into a successful business off of the back of that win. And Johnny's life went, well, not quite as smoothly. This goes to really highlight just how different these men's lives are when we see them again after 34 years, and how one moment can really alter the course of someone's life in an instant. Karate Kid would have us believe that both Daniel and Johnny's lives were nothing but all karate all the time. So much so that we might have thought that they would both go on to own their own dojos long after the movie ended. Well, in Cobra Kai, we learned that, like a lot of young people, karate was actually just a phase for both boys. We don't know how long they continued to study it after the final tournament, but it's clear at the beginning of Cobra Kai that neither of them have practiced in a very long time. Now, Daniel simply uses it to promote his business, and Johnny only thinks back on it as a hard time in his life. Even though they both wind up back in the dojo and reigniting their passion for the martial art, it's a pretty cool take to show us that the events that take place in these movies are really just one moment in time for their characters. The crane kick. Possibly one of the most iconic shots in 1980s movie history, but while it's always been framed as a moment of triumph for Daniel, Cobra Kai actually takes the time to put this huge moment in a slightly different perspective. See, while we all know that Crease was encouraging Johnny to pull some illegal maneuvers on Daniel during their epic final fight, it's also true that a kick to the face is, in itself, an illegal move. That's right. Daniel's triumph actually came in the form of a move that was very much not allowed during this kind of face-off, but he totally got away with it. While they don't dwell on this in Cobra Kai, or use it as a way to make Daniel to be a villain at all, it is important to acknowledge that he is not a perfect person, and both boys were not exactly acting above board. Of course, so much time has passed by the time we get to this revelation that it doesn't really haunt either Daniel or Johnny, but it does add some complexity to their long-standing rivalry. Where Daniel LaRusso was without a doubt the hero of Karate Kid, he was the Karate Kid after all, Cobra Kai has taken a slightly different approach in how his character is portrayed some 30 years after his greatest triumph. While Daniel might not be as down on his luck as Johnny, and would appear to have turned himself into quite a success as the years have gone by, the show takes great care to make sure that we see him as a guy with problems of his own, and he is kind of cheesy. Even though he has a successful car dealership that earns him a comfortable living, we can see in the commercials that he stars in that he is still living in the past. He uses his former glory as Karate Kid to sell cars, executing some karate punches intercut with lines about chopping prices. Yeah, you get it? He even opens the commercial by saying "Bonsai," which we think Mr. Miyagi himself probably wouldn't have liked in the least. This doesn't make Daniel a bad person, of course. It just shows that he's forgotten some of the most important of Mr. Miyagi's teachings over the years, and has instead used them to sell his products. When you think back about Karate Kid as an adult, it becomes clear that the real villain in the whole thing isn't the 16-year-old Johnny, but the very grown-up John Crease, Johnny's vicious and vengeful karate teacher. This man spends his time teaching young and impressionable boys that they can and should use violence to deal with just about any of their problems, and is pretty much the exact opposite of Mr. Miyagi. He is the one who rejects Daniel and Miyagi's peace offering after Johnny and the gang beat up Daniel, and he coaches his students to use illegal moves on Daniel during the fight. Luckily, in Cobra Kai, both Johnny and Daniel have completely moved on from having him in their lives whatsoever. He did disappear after the events of Karate Kid, but none of Johnny's students at Cobra Kai have ever heard of him, as it's clear that Johnny never took the time to teach them about who he is. We've already talked about how this show is told from a very different point of view, and that of course is Johnny's. One of the most unexpected things about Cobra Kai was that it would be examining the story from Johnny's perspective, and we don't think it would have been the same without doing so. In Karate Kid, we never really learn about why Johnny is the way he is, or really anything about his life. In fact, we rarely do. In most movies about good guys versus bad guys, you never get to see the side of the so-called bad guy. Instead, they're just a one-sided foil for the good guy to overcome, rather than an actual person. What Cobra Kai does so well is show us that, in reality, there are usually really complex reasons why bullies are the way they are, and that the lines between good and bad are actually quite blurry. We never really know what someone is dealing with in their own life because we have no choice but to worry about our own. Cobra Kai probably would have gotten old a lot faster and be a much less compelling story overall if it was just the same old bad guy versus good guy story, but because it turned all of that on its head and presented Johnny as a whole person with some real struggles of his own, it really keeps us coming back for more. Right at the beginning of the original Karate Kid, we learn that Johnny and his high school sweetheart Allie had already broken up. Allie then becomes one of the first people that Daniel befriends when he and his mom move from New Jersey to Los Angeles, where the movie begins. This friendship between Allie and Daniel is one of the main reasons why Johnny and his gang of bullies go after Daniel, and serves as a catalyst for all of the conflict between them. But the one thing we never know when watching the original is why exactly Allie and Johnny broke up to begin with. Well, in Cobra Kai, they finally give us the long-awaited answer to that question. In the second season of the show, Johnny goes out with all of his old karate friends and they reminisce about the good old days when they used to run around and get into trouble in high school. It turns out that before the events of Karate Kid took place, one of these nights was Allie's birthday. Johnny and the gang went out and had a little too much to drink, and he missed her birthday completely. This was the straw that broke the camel's back, and after 2 years, Allie ended things for good. One of the absolute coolest things about the first episode of Cobra Kai was how the filmmakers used original footage from Karate Kid to start the entire series off with a bang, or more accurately, a kick. The very first moments of the new series takes place in the final seconds of Karate Kid during the fight between Daniel and Johnny. It was the perfect way to drop the audience right back into the world of Karate Kid, and now Cobra Kai. But it wasn't just pulled right from the movie. They actually added in some Karate Kid footage of the fight that had never been seen before. They added a bunch of different shots that illustrate the fight from Johnny's perspective in order to change the mood from Daniel's triumph to Johnny's defeat. They also included the moment where Crease tells Johnny to use the illegal foot sweep and highlight Johnny's reaction, which shows how hesitant he was to break the rules in that way. All of this is done to shed some light on Johnny's memory of how the fight went down, because he's going to be the character who we follow for the rest of Cobra Kai.
All right, you want my advice? Stop being so annoying.
If you haven't binged Cobra Kai, now is the perfect time. And why not throw in a Karate Kid rewatch while you're at it? What do you think of this retelling of the story? Do you like what they've done with the characters, or was it better left alone? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with the latest videos from ScreenRant. See ya!